If you're looking to hire in Brazil in 2026, then this is the video for you. Welcome back to the Borderless Founder. I'm Jonathan Sellers. I'm the CEO of Future Global, and I'm the Borderless Founder. Today on our research series, we're digging into Brazil. We're going to discuss everything around ease of doing business, logistics, hiring and employment law, and generally everything you would need to know to decide if Brazil is the right place to grow your team in 2026. Our research series is based around the Borderless Founders 4 pillars for global expansion. And so on these 4 pillars of talent and skills, cost and economics, operational fit, and compliance and risk, we dig in to see if a country's profile fits your goals and needs for your company as you plan to grow. We're going to start with Brazil with the basics, right? So we're going to dig into some of the demographics and stats, and then we're going to work our way through the 4 pillars to help you figure out, based off your specific needs, if this is a good fit. And so I think there's a common assumption that a lot of people just believe Brazil is another Latin American country. It's just like everything else. I think this is generally a misconception in general about Latin American countries. But Brazil really is a tier 1 global market, right? It's a huge market, huge metro areas, huge population. Obviously not necessarily Spanish speaking. There are some Spanish speakers, but the dominant language is Portuguese. It is generally a U.S. aligned time zone market, but there are significant complexities with doing business in Brazil for a variety of reasons, which we'll cover. So let's get started with some of the statistics, right? One thing that might be really interesting to know is that Brazil is currently producing over 100,000 IT graduates per year, right? There's approximately 750,000 software developers. This is more than any other country in Latin America. And unfortunately, though, to access this talent, it requires navigating one of the most complicated employment systems in the world. Employer costs range between 22 and 44% above the cost of an employee's salary. And that's just, the beginning with some of the complexity there. We got to keep in mind that this is the deepest talent pool in Latin America for engineering, fintech, data science, enterprise IT, and so there's a lot of opportunity here. What does it look like in terms of population? 216 million is the total population of Brazil. That's a 2020 estimate based off of World Bank. And so where are these people based, right? So obviously it's a huge geographical area. The Amazon, takes up a huge percentage of the country. But when we look at the population centers, Sao Paulo is the largest city in the Americas, but in Brazil as well, of around 22 million. You have Rio de Janeiro, which is around 13 million. Belo Horizonte, around 6 million. Brasilia, around 3 million. And so median age is around 34 years. Approximately 40% of the population is under 30. So compared to some of the other cities we've looked at in our research series so far, slightly older population. In Sao Paulo, you have your financial and tech capital. Rio de Janeiro is going to be oil and gas and a huge creative center. Belo Horizonte is an emerging tech hub. Campinas is a research and development center. Florianopolis is a growing tech scene, and so on and so forth. So lots of different areas throughout the country. When you think of English proficiency, the score is somewhere in the range of 487 to 490 on the EF English proficiency scale. It's historically ranked around 31st out of 44 countries. It's, to be honest, it's a low proficiency category when you compare it globally, but moderate within Latin America. And so it falls, behind Argentina on the list in Latin American countries. And so There can be some challenges there. I can speak from experience in recruiting in Brazil that English proficiency will vary greatly by location, where if you're targeting specific locations for roles, and also just in general, as you're speaking with candidates, there are a lot of candidates who are working on their English, but they're not there yet. You can tell they're working hard. It's a huge priority for them to improve their English skills. But there are, when we're talking about a country of 219 million people, there are obviously a huge number of fluent English speakers in Brazil. The primary time zone is Brasilia time, BRT. This is GMT -3. And so that is for like Sao Paulo, Rio, Brasilia. When you go to Amazon time, that's GMT -4, but the vast majority of business centers, the vast majority of population centers are going to be in that Brasilia time zone, which is GMT -3. And so what does that look like when we compare the time zone to different regions? So it's a couple hours, 2 hours ahead of, Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time US, and it's 1 hour ahead during daylight savings time. When we're talking West Coast US, it's 5 hours ahead or 4 hours ahead, right? And then London is 3 hours behind or 4 hours behind, depending on time of the year based around the daylight savings time. Brazil stopped daylight savings time in 2019, so now they are on, recently, they're on a fixed schedule. So, it's really interesting time when you're talking about Sao Paulo, Rio, all these population centers where they really are interestingly positioned between U.S., Canada, and Europe. So really could go either way. All right, so let's dig into the first pillar. And so the first pillar is going to be the talent and skills, right? So we briefly rushed through that there at the beginning, but let's dig in a little bit deeper into some of the leading industries, right? So first industry, technology and software engineering. We just talked about it. Largest developer pool in Latin America, around 750,000 people. In a couple years, they're going to be close to 1 million people, right, who are in this space. Deep expertise in fintech, payments, and banking. They have an advanced financial ecosystem, right? And so they have a lot of people working in this space. When you go deeper there, so you have the fintech and digital commerce industry itself. They have digital banks like Nubank, Pix, Instant Payment. And so they have a deep pool in payment processing, fraud, risk analytics, financial software. Going even further, enterprise IT and shared services. So there's many multinationals already operating within the country. And so in Sao Paulo, specifically, like there's a number of global companies already there in that enterprise IT and shared services space. Industry 4, data science and analytics. There's a growing pool of data professionals serving both domestic and international companies. Now, at Future Global, we specialize in marketing, digital marketing, web design, web development, these type of roles. And so what I have found is in Sao Paulo specifically, there's a ton of media buyers. There's a ton of creative types, creative director types, video editing expertise, graphic design support. So there's like this huge ecosystem as well in this, because obviously if all these companies are there, you need marketing support to grow the companies. There's a lot of international agencies that have bases in Sao Paulo or Rio, or et cetera. So there's a lot of other support roles there as well. So some interesting niche skills that you might find in Brazil, maybe a little more unique, would be, as mentioned, related to that fintech and payments engineering, because of that infrastructure that we mentioned. Also, there is a deep mobile app development base. The domestic smartphone market is massive, as you would imagine, with 219 million people. And so there are quite a number of people skilled in app, iOS, Android development. And then third would be agriculture technology, right? Ag tech. So this is due to Brazil's agricultural dominance and then desire to modernize and make more efficient and bring technology into the equation. So there's a lot of opportunity there. A lot of universities that are driving this, and all across the country. And obviously this type of technology is an emphasis in the country. Gaining technology skills. As mentioned before, the official language is Portuguese and moderate English proficiency, but higher potentially in the tech hubs when you're talking with multinational companies. Typically, people are prioritizing also learning English because they're looking at their job opportunities and they know that there's going to be potentially opportunities overseas with English-speaking companies. All right, so if we dig in now, if we understand, right, really strong base in technology, really strong base with finance, with business support roles, right? What does this look like when we start to talk about salary ranges and costs? We also referenced earlier that there's higher costs to employers, and so let's start digging into that, right? So we start off with the currency, Brazilian real. Unfortunately, highly volatile against the USD. Currency risk is significant, so that's something right away, right? We have to address it. As we go into salary ranges, I'm going to discuss the real salary range, and then we will convert to USD. You'll obviously, if you are basing on a different currency as your home currency, you'll be able to compare to, USD essentially. All right, so when we're looking at the information here, I'm also going to make a note that sometimes the research that's available will vary greatly, and in some of these roles, I'll be able to give some context just from the recruiting that we're doing at Future Global and the ranges that we're seeing. But when we're looking at the software developers, right, there's a big range because there's also a big range of skill sets. And so what we're seeing is it can range anywhere from around 82,000 real per year, which would be around 16,500 USD per year. And this is entry level, right? This is starting out. And this can range upwards of more than 200,000 when you're looking at senior software developers. So we're saying anywhere from 82,000 is an average, around 16,500 USD. And then that can be as low as 25,000 entry-level real up to 182,000 senior level, right? That's according to one source. Another source has pegged the average at much higher, 200,000, around 40,000 USD, with an entry level at 140,000 or 28,000, and then senior with 8 years plus up to 250,000, right? So that's 50,000 USD. So let's break it down, right? What does that mean? That means that there are roles out there where people are getting paid around 16, 18, 20,000 USD per year as a software developer, but probably you're going to be looking at paying someone in the 30s, 40s, or 50,000s USD, depending on their skill sets, depending on their experience levels. Okay, and so there's a wide range because obviously there's all different types of developers, there's all different types of needs, there's different priorities for hiring in companies, right? And so another source, which is called Super Sourcing, they've done a breakdown on Sao Paulo and generally broke down USD costs for software engineers, right? So a senior software engineer from their side is 55,000 to 80. Okay, so that's a little higher. That's basically starting where the other sources put the top of the range for senior. Okay, full stack engineer, they're looking at 50,000 to 75,000. Data engineer, data scientist, 60 to 90,000. DevOps, SREs are looking at 65 to 95, and people specializing in fintech, payments, SMEs, 70 to 105,000, right? I do believe that is going to be more realistic to get top tier talent. You're going to be looking in those ranges. Equivalent salaries in US for the same person, same experience level are going to be 200,000, 150 to 300,000 probably. Some of these specialized roles could be pushing 400,000, especially when you go into the AI space. Okay. Most likely, if you look at like other LATAM markets, right, like Colombia, it's going to be a little bit more expensive in Brazil than Colombia. So you're talking probably 40 to 60% lower cost, especially when you're factoring tier 1 cities in the U.S. And so, just keep that in mind. But, okay, that's in the developer space, which that's obviously this huge base of talent in Brazil. Now, if I give a little context around the marketing side of things, media buyers, creative directors, things like this. So what I'm seeing is monthly salaries of anywhere between 1,800 USD for somebody with 3 years plus. Mostly we're only recruiting at Future Global people who have 3 years or more experience in the field that they're applying for, in the expertise, that they're applying for specifically. And so we're typically seeing, salaries bottom level is going to be around 1,800 of what I'm seeing. Mostly people are looking in the 22 to 2,700 range is really their desired salary. And then I've seen upwards to 3,500. Now, these are not developers. These are media buyers. These are people in social media, content creation, content development strategy, marketing strategy, even people who have extensive experience working in large agencies. They're still in that 3,000, 3,500 range. So the developers in general, developers are going to be, demanding higher salaries. And so we're seeing a little bit lower than these numbers. And this is in Sao Paulo. Most of our, candidates are coming from Sao Paulo. Generally, we do have candidates from other cities, but I would say 75% are from Sao Paulo. Okay, so when we look at the additional costs, the employer costs, and how do you have to factor the true total cost of hiring in Brazil with creating an entity or using an employer of record service to have full-time employees in the country. So you would be looking at the mandatory employer contributions and the required benefits. And so Social Security is going to be around 20% of the gross salary. That's the employer portion. The FGTS, which is the severance fund, that's going to be 8% of gross salary deposited into the employee account monthly. There's an additional INSS on high salaries, which is 8% extra if an employee earns greater than 5 times the minimum wage, which is around 3,135 real threshold. Once we consider mandatory employee benefits, there is a 13-month salary. This is mandatory, and it's typically paid in 2 installments, which are November and December. So this is around 8.33% of annual salary. There are paid vacation days, 30 calendar days after 12 months, plus a third of the salary bonus. I'll try to pronounce abono diario is during their vacation, right? So when the employee takes their vacation, they get the third of the salary bonus to have a nice vacation. All right, there's also transportation vouchers. So employer covers costs above 6% of employee salary. Meal vouchers, standard expectation in corporate roles, the cost can vary there. Private health insurance, this is a standard expectation for professional roles, and the cost varies by the plan. And so when you break all that down, the total employee cost burden typically will range between 22 to 44% on top of gross salary. And so that's combining all those requirements plus all the accruals, right? So the 13-month salary, vacation accrual, other benefits. Termination costs. So if there is a unjustified dismissal penalty, right? You're looking at a 40% fine on the FGTS balance plus severance pay. There's a 30 to 90 day notice period requirement based on the employee's tenure. And so if you're looking at that 70,000 annual gross salary for a senior engineer in Sao Paulo, and you add the 20% INSS of 14,000, you add the FGTS 8% of 5,600, the 13th salary accrual 5,833, the vacation accrual 1,944, the health and meal benefits 3 to 6,000. You're looking at a total cost of employee of a $70,000 employee is actually 100 to 105,000. And so this is, approximate based off of the currency rate estimates. So these are things to consider, right? When you're factoring, this is through Latin America in general. You have to factor these things, but I think, this is where, if you're coming from a country that does not have all these mandated benefits, the U.S. namely, you have to go into this with a different mindset. You have to be planning for these things in a different way, operating your business in a different way to operate successfully here. If you do things correctly, once again, as always, no problem. If you do things incorrectly, you could have a devastational impact to your business by not preparing. All right, so let's dig into the next pillar, and that'll be the operational fit pillar. All right, so typical work hours are going to be 9 a.m. to 6 with a 1-hour lunch break. As we discussed earlier, there's an excellent overlap with time zones if you are East Coast US, potentially even if you are in Western Europe or the UK as well. There is a decent overlap with West Coast US as well. The communication style is going to be relationship-oriented, friendly, collaborative. In the workplace culture, you're going to find a high value placed on personal connections and team cohesion. There is an expectation of a structured hierarchy, but because there is such a heavy tech presence and forward-moving mentality in this type of industry, there is a little bit less of that, right? So that's changing as things are changing with the type of work and the type of company structures, but there is still going to remain a respect for seniority levels. When delivering feedback, it's generally going to be received, but I think you have to be strategic in delivering negative feedback, I think, in general. And these are hard generalities for 200 million people, right? But when you just think of how the culture operates. All right, so when you think about, and this is maybe one you've heard for sure, when you think about holidays and you think about how do we operate, what's the team going to be doing? Well, in February, March, you're going to have a shutdown for Carnival, and that is going to be a major expectation. Maybe if you know anything about Brazil, then you probably have heard of Carnival. It's very important in the country. Also, many people will take December, January year-end breaks, right? Extended breaks. That's maybe when they take their holidays. Keeping in mind that in South America, they're going to be experiencing summer during that time. So it's a very logical time with the holidays and summer break to take a long holiday. There are approximately 12 to 13 national holidays plus other state or municipal city holidays. When you look at the internet and power reliability, in urban centers you have good quality, fast internet. Fiber is widely available, and the power is generally reliable in urban areas. So mostly where you would be looking for talent, you're going to have no issues on those two pieces. Now, once we go to the last pillar, compliance and risk, we always want to start where kind of, in my opinion, one of the most important questions you would ask if you are going to build in a country is, can a foreigner set up an entity? Can a foreign company own an entity? 100%, no requirement for foreign partners or for local partners. And so the answer is yes. But compared to most other countries, this is going to be very complex. This requires you to register with CNPJ. You have to have local legal representation. You have to have a local bank account. You have to have integration with eSocial, which is a government reporting platform. And this can take you months, right? It can take you months. There are a number of employer of record companies that operate in Brazil and can provide you the much quicker path to hiring team. This would be I would recommend this strongly. So at Future Global, we can provide this service as well through our partnerships. And I would strongly recommend this would be the starting point. Once you are 100% sure that Brazil is the path forward for you, Brazil is a long-term path for you, then you can engage in this months-long process to create your entity, and you can transfer your team members from the employer of record to your entity directly as direct hires. But I would most likely, unless there's another specific reason where you really, really know you're going to commit to Brazil, I don't know that I would recommend just starting off creating the entity. I think I would really fill that out and make sure that that is going to be the path. Now, when you think about, well, what if I just hire as contractors, right? So this is where we always want to scrutinize the relationship that you have with someone. If you're trying to long-term hire someone as a contractor, when they are not really a contractor, you must know that Brazilian labor courts are aggressively scrutinizing contractor relationships because you are going around you're not paying taxes, you're not giving the employee the benefits that they are entitled to within the country. You will find employees who are open to this in high numbers in Brazil. Some countries you will not. I do believe you will find in certain industries, certain types of employees, you will find a high number who are willing to do this. It's all good as long as everything is good, right? But if problems arise, you could find yourself with a large problem on your hands because when you do think of that entity creation timeline, that several months, going through all the processes, bank account opening, get yourself registered, everything you have to do personally. It's a lot of, it's just a lot of work, a lot of risk when you could use an employer of record and essentially get right up and running, give that person, that employee, the stability, the comfort of, having the security, having the benefits that they're supposed to have. But obviously, there's the potential to start off with a contract relationship. Typically, you are going to have a local director, not a shareholder, but a local director, and you will be required to have a local legal representative representing your company if you do eventually go the entity creation route. Payroll is expected monthly. It does go through that eSocial system. You have to file with multiple authorities, is why you would really need, that strategic partnership on the ground. Why we really would recommend the employer of record route first, so you can really dip your toes in there. And then keeping in mind, any route you go, you have very highly complex labor law. Even going through the requirements, comparing it to a lot of other countries, just reading through the requirements is a lot more complicated, a lot more confusing. So you want to make sure that you have those resources in place that truly understand that. Definitely not I will figure it out scenario. There are a lot of unions. Each industry has unions that negotiate binding collective agreements. Sometimes usually these requirements are above what is required nationally. Termination complexity, can't emphasize it enough, extremely complex. Strict procedure, unjustified termination is 40% penalties. You have to pay severances, right? There's a 90-day probationary period where things can be a little bit easier to end a relationship, but you're still going to have to document things and follow processes. They do have a data protection law, LGPD, Leisure Tactile, and you're required to be compliant as you're operating there. So keeping in mind these legal pitfalls, don't misclassify employees as contractors. Make sure you're following that correctly. If you, as I mentioned in other videos, if you do this and it's discovered, and then you do want to, you may be saying, well, we don't have an entity. I'm nothing to Brazil, whatever the case. I just have this situation where I'm breaking the law there. But what if you decide in the future, we have a team and we're growing here? Well, you may be slapped with a lot of owed back taxes and fees and penalties when you do so, because now you have been breaking the law. So this is something to keep in mind. Do not ignore union collective agreements, and do not miss sector-specific requirements, right? Do not fail to register employees properly with eSocial and Social Security. Do not pay in USD without a compliant local payroll processing service. And do not follow improper termination procedures, because they will lead to lawsuits and significant penalties. So the main thing that you should take away from this is there is a lot of opportunity, there's a lot of talent. Potentially this talent can come to your business at great cost savings and also great alignment geographically and time zone wise, but you must proceed with caution in Brazil. Failing to do so can have significant consequences. So that's the scary part, right? But if you follow the law, if you align yourself with trustworthy partners, at Future Global, we can help you navigate this. Our partners in Brazil can help you navigate this. Should have no risk, right? If you know this going in, if you ask the right questions, if you understand. It's just like everywhere. You have to follow the laws, you have to follow the rules. If you don't see yourself doing so, I would not recommend Brazil, because there are significant penalties if you do not follow. Okay, stepping outside of the employment law side of things, let's look at the general risk assessment. Okay, so for political stability, there's moderate political stability. There are stable democratic institutions, but it's polarized. Like many countries, right? Extremity in viewpoints. There's moderate economic stability. It's a large, diversified economy, but unfortunately, it is prone to volatility and currency fluctuations. So, and that's consistently happening over decades. The currency volatility risk is high. It is historically volatile against the USD. So if you're, ideally it's aligning well with US companies. Just know that you have to factor this in, and I want you to think about it like this, right? So if you're transferring 20,000 USD this month to Brazil to cover all your payroll, all your required payments, the savings that you should be setting aside to pay for things like having to terminate an employee or things like this, their severances. Next month, it could be 19,000. And you're like, okay, great. We saved $1,000 this month because of currency fluctuation. But the following month could be 22,000. These are extreme figures. But the larger your salary base is in a country with volatile currency, the larger the swing could be in your favor or against you. And so what does this mean? If you have 100,000 USD, you're growing a team in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, wherever the case. And now there is a big swing against your favor. You could now be needing 110,000 where it's been 100,000. You're budgeting for 100,000. Now you could go 3 months in a row where it's closer to 110,000. Now you just went $30,000 over your expected expenses. So these are things to definitely consider. You just have to budget for it, essentially. Regulatory environment is complex, frequently changing, requires ongoing monitoring. It will be impossible to monitor this and run a company in another country, and this is an office where you have employees. You have to have trustworthy partners on the ground in any country, but especially a country with complex systems like Brazil. The 5-year risk profile is medium to low to improving, right? So that's good news, right? It seems like a lot of these things are stable right now, relatively, and improving. So this is always good news when considering something that possibly could be. All right, so when we take all of this together, we look at all 4 pillars, right? So what is the verdict? Well, from the talent and skills score, very high, largest talent pool in Latin America, exceptional fintech engineering depth, 100,000 IT graduates annually. From my experience, also very talented pool of digital marketing professionals, creative professionals, et cetera, et cetera. So very high talent base. Cost and economic score, medium to high value. So you do have significant savings for the same role to role from a U.S. standpoint. But you do have to make sure that you're not forgetting the 22 or 44% employer costs. And so when you look at the face value salary and you look at the end result, you have to factor and make sure that you're factoring the whole amount to truly understand the difference. Don't get caught with, hiring 5 people and then you actually owe 30% more than what you thought. It adds up quickly. For the operations and fit score, it's high. It's excellent time zone alignment. It's a collaborative culture, strong infrastructure. Challenge will be Portuguese English language barrier, and then the benefits, managing the benefits, the expectations, the time off, and the strong expectation for those things which are norms in the country. And then the compliance and risk score will be a medium to low. And the reason why is because it's extremely complex labor law, strong employee protections, high termination costs. And so because of all of that, we would strongly recommend using an employer of record to enter the Brazilian market. We would be happy at Future Global, to help you through our partnerships with that. And drop a comment, go to our website, gofutureglobal.com, and get in touch with us, and we'll be happy to help you there. What is the strategic profile label? This is a Tier 1 LATAM scale and delivery hub. Okay, best fit scenarios. U.S. companies seeking to scale, companies needing to build or expand engineering teams with access to Latin America's deepest talent pool. Fintech, digital commerce firms, access to uniquely experienced payments and banking talent. Enterprises establishing America's regional capabilities. So for instance, Sao Paulo as a global capability center for shared services, data, and engineering. Organizations willing to invest in key proper compliance infrastructure or partner with experienced EOR providers. Okay. And so all that good stuff, but you have to say, I'm willing to do this work. I'm willing to do the things the right way. Then you could be a fit. Now, I'll just say, if you're not a fit, if you don't want to deal with that, Brazil is not the fit for you. It's not a fit for companies who are seeking quick, low commitment experiments. It requires serious investment, right? It's complex. Organizations unwilling to navigate these compliance issues. They don't want to partner with EORs. They just like, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to hire as contractors and just, that's how it's going to be. It's not the place for you. And then other markets, if you're looking for just extremely, and I don't mean to downplay other markets, but if you're looking for other, like the lowest possible cost talent, and that's your priority, then this is probably not your market either. If you require 100% perfect English fluency in every role, right, maybe Brazil is not your market now either. These are all things to take into consideration, but obviously huge potential opportunities in Brazil, huge upside along with challenges. And so if you're willing to put in that work, if you're willing to do things the right way, you can open the door to this massive talent pool in Brazil. So we at the Borderless Founder will be doing more deep dives into more countries. And if you have a country you'd like to see us dig into, please drop it in the comments. If we've missed anything about Brazil, let us know. If we've misrepresented anything, let us know. We definitely want to make sure we're presenting the correct information. And we will be on the ground in Brazil soon. That's a little teaser because we have our documentary series. Flights are already booked and announcements are coming soon. We look forward to seeing some of our friends in, I won't give away the city, but some of our friends in Brazil soon. And otherwise, if you've stuck with us this long, please just go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell. You'll get notified whenever we post another research series video. And especially, you do not want to miss these country documentary videos. We're going to be doing deep dives into the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem of a given city, showing you as a global founder how you can tap into these markets and what makes a market a good fit for your business. So that's it, guys. We'll see you on the next one.